Thanks for staying on BERNAMA TV. I'm Jessie CHAHAL and you're watching BERNAMA World. Now, 2025 has been called the year the world struggled to talk, not because people were silent, but because everyone was speaking all at once. With election noise, misinformation and the speed of AI, genuine dialogue became harder to hold. Well, to help us unpack why conversations still matter, we're joined today by international moderator, TV presenter and journalist Ali ASLAN. Ali, welcome to BERNAMA and welcome to Kuala Lumpur.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Jessie.
Well, it's good to have you here with us. I understand you've just touched down and it's been a direct trip from the airport to our studios here, but it's wonderful to have this conversation with you here today. 2025 has been a noisy year, not just for the region but internationally as well. And as for someone who's on the go, traveling and having these conversations with world leaders, from elections to tensions across with the war, AI disruption, cultural divides and misunderstandings, all this has created more talk but less understanding, or so it seems. What is that like for you, and what is sort of the feedback you're hearing as you navigate different parts of the world?
Yeah, thanks again so much for having me. As you said, I literally just came from the airport. This is my first visit, I should disclose, here in Kuala Lumpur and Malaysia. Very happy to be with you. And indeed, during, as you pointed out correctly, during a very challenging time that we're living in. And yes, I do live it. I do experience it everywhere I go, whenever I sit down with those world leaders, CEOs, policymakers, newsmakers all around the world. It is very difficult indeed to cut through the noise and to focus on what really matters at the end of the day. There's certainly, as you pointed out correctly, there's certainly no lack of discussions, no lack of talk, no lack of noise. But really, what about the exchange? A truly authentic and meaningful exchange between people on a political level, but even on an individual level. I don't know how it is with you, Jessie, but even within my own family, I'm seeing the divide. I'm seeing the political divide. So there's definitely there's a trickle-down effect, sort of from the political rhetoric all the way down to our private lives, and that is something that gives me a great deal of concern, for sure.
That's right. Definitely a point to ponder on there, that degree of separation in terms of understanding or misunderstanding, backed up by too much information, or as the Gen Z will refer to it as TMI. All these things really come into play. But you spend the entire year, especially 2025, speaking to world leaders and CEOs as well. When you look back at the year that has been, did the world get better at listening and understanding, or do you think we took a few steps back?
Well, I think if you're looking at the state of the world these days, Jessie, with the war in Ukraine, with what is happening in Gaza and all around the world in Sudan, it's very hard to make the argument that 2025 has been a year that brought a positive leap and a positive step for mankind. I think that's very fair to say. No, I think we are in a very difficult time. We are at a time of conflict. We're at a time of division globally, by the way. Globally. I'm based in Berlin. I'm based in Europe. You certainly see it there across the world. I've lived a substantial amount of time in the United States, my second home. Certainly there's no lack of division and polarization in that country. So no, 2025 I think is the year where the rhetoric has become more poisonous, more divisive, where people are no longer listening to each other. There's a lot of talk, especially on X. We journalists, of course, we have to keep track on it on a daily basis. There's certainly no lack of opinion, but unfortunately, when it comes to efforts to finding common ground, that is what I'm seeing is very much lacking.
And when you find yourself caught in this crossfire of division and trying to have difficult points put across the table, trying to level up more understanding as well, when you manage people who disagree strongly, for example, what techniques are helping you to navigate this, to lower the temperature, so to say? What worked this year from the years before?
Well, I think it helps, at least that is my perspective and my experience, to address the elephant in the room, to address differences and different opinions up front, not to tow around, not to beat around the bush, but rather face them heads on, but then try to find through a degree of empathy, if you will, some common ground.
But is it always that straightforward and easy to address the elephant in the room?
Well, I mean, it is our job, isn't it? As journalists, as moderators, as presenters, you know, we don't have abundant time.
That's true.
So we have to get to the heart of the issue and to the essence of whatever it is that we're discussing. And my technique and my desire and truly my aim is always to get to the heart of the issue quite quickly. Yes.
What does one make of cultural sensitivities and you know, jargons and terms, and all of that comes into play as well, as you are on the global stage speaking to people of various you know, of different backgrounds and belief systems?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, I think cultural sensitivities, as you pointed out correctly, are key, of course. I mean, this is where people like you and I, with multi-ethnic backgrounds, if you will, with perhaps greater deal of empathy and understanding for how the world works and how different people from all across the aisles are thinking, you know. But look, I'm a German citizen with Turkish roots and a U.S. education, if you will. So for me, it is innate, right? I mean, my biography has always been within this triangle of Germany, Turkey and the United States. So to me, it is coming easily, to be quite honest, sitting across somebody and trying to understand and respect the customs and traditions of wherever that person may be from.
Well, we speak of listeners and viewers and audiences worldwide. It does seem that they are more impatient now. I remember a time when information was put forward to you in a bite-size version or a format, but now that those bite sizes are packets of data just coming at you non-stop. How do you keep your audience and their sort of interest alive in discussions that are sometimes and perhaps can be dominated by speed and outrage? Yeah,
absolutely. But look, just the way you're doing right now, you know, I think it's a matter of sticking to the issue, obviously being authentic, being very well prepared, doing your research, but at the same time also trying to get to the gist of whatever is being up for discussion, right? But look, at the end of the day, it's not magic. It's not a secret of what we're doing. These are human to human relations, journalism, interviewing people, moderating, you know, trying to read the other person. A lot of psychological aspects to it as well.
I love what you said there, the human to human relation in a time of technology and even AI, where we're trying to replace sort of the human emotion and word. That human to human connection still remains, and I guess that's, you know, a feather in our hat most times. Now, from those global conversations and that stage, in terms of what you've highlighted, bridging divides, having that conversations that really matter, let us into some of the rooms that you enter. For example, at the G20 sidelines, UN panels, some of the major economic forums, you often witness leadership raw and up front, so to say, the human side of leadership. Is there one moment this year perhaps that you could reflect on and share with us what that real dialogue looked like, what it felt like, and how did that moment really stand out?
You know what it is? Oftentimes what I'm seeing and also regretting is many times the politicians that we're seeing then on screen giving press conferences or being at roundtable and often criticizing for speaking in a very maybe too technical term, maybe a bit robotic even. I think even they themselves find them, you know, feel trapped at times, because I encounter these politicians before they go on stage, before you know, we are conducting these interviews in the green rooms, and you know, at the end of the day, these are human beings, you know, and you can tell they are feeling the weight of the office that they are carrying. But every single word that they utter, keep that in mind, Shelley, of course, can move stock markets, can create a havoc, can create wars even.
Absolutely.
So it's the burden that they are feeling at times stands in stark contrast to what I'm experiencing, or how I'm experiencing these high-level individuals off stage, where they are, frankly speaking, oftentimes very cordial, very, very humble even.
But do you find yourself in all that of taking a more neutral stance, or do you find yourself perhaps feeling frustrated with the inability to get these leaders to really speak the truth, or the truth as we know it or see it? There's something to be said about media freedom there as well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I would be lying if I said I wasn't frustrated. Of course, you want to get the best out of your interview partner, as you do right now.
Yes.
You want to make it lovely, lovely. You want to make it engaging. You want to make it lively, right? I mean, this is our aim always, no matter whether it's a CEO, whether it's a prime minister, whether it's a sports star, whoever it is, and oftentimes, yes, I am frustrated because I'm feeling that the person sitting across from me, perhaps on a personal level, would like to give what I need from that person, but cannot do it in the capacity of the official, right? So they're stuck to the talking points that their advisors have shared with them, and making it sound static, robotic. And then, of course, it's my job and yours in those situations to try to cut through the prepared statements and find that human touch, find that human there. Because, at the end of the day, I think a lot of trust has been lost, right? I mean, if you went down here on the street in Kuala Lumpur, in Berlin, in Istanbul, in Washington, and you say, what do you think of politicians, right? I mean, right, the first reaction would be one of frustrations. You can't trust them. They're all lying, they all have their own
empty
agenda.
Empty
promises, they don't know what it feels like for us, and so on and so forth, right? And I think so often I encountered former leaders, and they talk to me very frankly and very honestly and bluntly about the weight, the heavy weight they felt while they were in office, while at the same time realizing conundrum that it's sort of a vicious cycle, isn't it? So you become very guarded because of the office, but that makes you perhaps on a certain level makes you lose trust, from the public, because they don't feel that a human being is connecting with them. So it's really a vicious cycle. I don't have the solution for it.
Do you feel that they are oftentimes misunderstood by the media, by journalists who try to penetrate and try to push them for the soundbite and to get that one-liner headline out? Do you think that sometimes they too are cornered to a certain extent, vis-a-vis having someone who speaks well, has a good relationship with TV, radio, to go out there and share what their message is for their country or the world? Yeah,
I mean, look, let's be very honest when we're talking about the lack of trust in politicians and political institutions. We as journalists and media, we don't fare much better these days, right? A lot of people are also losing trust in the news and what mainstream media, legacy media is telling them and presenting to them. So yes, maybe there's an argument to be made. I think you're right. There's an argument to be made that oftentimes not me, but some colleagues of ours are not so much that their aim is more, the headline, the quick headline, the juicy headline that they want, and you see it. These press conferences now, I'm not just talking about the ones in the White House, but generally speaking have sort of become a battleground, very antagonistic between journalists and press spokesperson. You can feel that it's become a bit of a theater, and I think an average viewer watching this with real life problems, with cost of living, skyrocketing everywhere you go, with people trying to make ends meet, and seeing sort of the journalist and politician or spokesperson just battling it out for 30 minutes for, perhaps some short-lived fame, I think can be quite frustrating, yeah.
But that's what one sees on a screen, on their phones, on social media. But what really goes on behind the scenes, and the preparation and the strategy and the technique used is a lot of things that sort of, like an orchestra that comes together. What do you do when you deal with some ruffled feathers or with big egos? How do you go about that? Because when we think about that from outside looking in, it's almost as if dealing with some of these big names or big titles, obviously it's not a walk in the park. It does take skill and experience. And so how do you deal with them?
Well, look, you don't get to become a CEO or a high-level politician without a big ego. I think, because by definition you have to believe in yourself, right?
True.
You have to believe in your skill. You have to believe that you're the one who can save the country, who can save a certain company, and so on and so forth. So yes, of course, I mean, these are people that have, let's call it, a very robust self-confidence, right? But it's not my job. It's not my job to prod them or to stroke that ego. That's not our job, right?
So take us back to 2025.
Yes.
Is there one outstanding moment that comes to mind as we speak about how the year has been for you?
I mean, look, I shared the stage at once with Bill and Hillary Clinton together in Berlin in March. I mean, for one, I was genuinely struck by how I think composed and healthy President Bill Clinton still was at age 80.
Right.
And of course I couldn't help but wonder, I was looking at this man while he was speaking to me on stage and pondering, I was a student at Georgetown University when he was president, and it seemed like those were really the good times, I mean, you remember, he got a lot of flack,
Sure.
a lot of criticism. We remember the Lewinsky scandal and so on and so forth. But looking back in hindsight, in the mid-90s, so I couldn't help but wonder, become nostalgic during that interview. Obviously he was speaking about, from his point of view, the dangers of increased authoritarianism in the United States and the current occupant of the White House. But I was frankly just sitting there and thinking how far we have come, and I don't say in a positive way, how far we have come in 10, 20, 25 years. Those seem to be simpler times.
Yeah.
Those seem to be simpler times. Maybe every generation is thinking that. My father's generation will probably say, well,
back in our day,
back in our days, and so maybe it was just more of a reveal of my age, to be quite honest.
We're not giving it away. But amidst scandal and crisis and what's going on the global stage as well, what behaviors really make one a standout speaker when they are having these conversations, whether it's at a forum, at a conference, or giving even a press conference? What makes a leader or a speaker stand out?
Well, I think it's whether or not, and again, this is not magic, this is not a secret, whether or not you can connect with an audience, right? And somebody like Bill Clinton certainly could do it. Interestingly enough, even President Trump, some might find his rhetoric vile, and certainly I don't embrace everything that man says, but whether you like him or not, whether you're a fan or not, he connects with audiences. He knows how to
gets the ratings.
He gets the ratings, but also he knows how to use a certain form of language that everyone can resonate with. By the way, positively or negatively, right?
Right.
So this is not
both ends of the scale.
Both ends of the scale.
For that balance, right?
For that balance, for sure. Yeah.
So, what are some of the, or if not just one, blind spot do you think where conversations are not being had, or we're not highlighting enough? Because with media and with headlines and of course social media as well, it seems that certain areas get more limelight than the others. But when there are other important discussions that need to be had, in the world as well.
Look, I mean, to be quite honest, there's no lack of discussion about grand geopolitical issues. There's certainly no lack of discussions about AI, about the future of politics and so on and so forth, of Bitcoin, and you name it. But I think the one debate that, in my opinion, is still solely underreported is truly the skyrocketing cost of living crisis that we're seeing globally, right? No matter where you live, whether you are in Kuala Lumpur, whether you are in Istanbul, whether you're in Auckland, New Zealand, or whether you are in Bogota, Colombia, right? After COVID, after the pandemic, certainly, I'm no economist, so I have neither the explanation nor the solution to it, but it's definitely, it cannot be denied that life has become harder for everyone, while at the same time a very small percentage of people have benefited greatly and have doubled, if not tripled, their wealth. And I think that gap, that widening gap between rich and poor, is something that to me is still sorely underreported. We're pitting refugees against domestic inhabitants. We're pitting politicians versus media and so on and so forth. But really, to me, that's just smoke and mirror, right? I want to know, and I think everybody out there, the people would like to know, why some people are out there, indulging in a billionaire lifestyle, while more and more people are trying to make ends meet. Put food on the table. And globally, by the way, right? Even in countries, look, again, I live in Germany. In Berlin, up until 2, 3, 4 years ago, I've never seen homelessness. Now it's a very, very visual issue. New York City, a city I've called home for 10 years, always had a certain level degree of poverty, needless to say. But when I was there for the last time, the poverty and the decline has become very rampant and vivid. So I think that's one issue that politicians ignore at their own peril.
Well, Malaysia has taken the lead in terms of hosting ASEAN this year as chair, and communication definitely impacts what happens here on the regional stage, but also then it contributes to the conversation that's had on the global stage. And again, outside looking in, from your international perspective, what is the story Malaysia needs to be telling the world as we talk about some of the bread and butter issues concerning ASEAN and Asia as a whole, but also if you could offer one practical advice for Malaysia in terms of hosting those global conversations, what would that look like?
Well, I think, look, Malaysia, to me, to an outsider such as myself, truly and genuinely and with a great deal of credibility stands for pragmatism, for diversity, and I think that is the source of strength for this country. I mean, you see Malaysia's role, for instance, in mediating peace between Thailand and Cambodia, and I think this country of 35 million people, certainly a rising star here in Southeast Asia. You can feel the power when even you enter, when you land here and you come into the city and you look around, there's a certain level of energy that, frankly speaking, is getting less and less on my continent, on Europe. So I think for Malaysia, the story and what I would like to see this beautiful and multi-ethnic country is to use its DNA, it's to use its multi-ethnic, pragmatic, diverse DNA to become a mediator, to become a mediating voice on the global scale. I certainly believe that this country has the strength and the ability to do so.
Well, of course, it's been a great year, 2025, closing in, moving into a brand new year. What's the lineup for you, and what are the conversations you hope to be having with some of these world leaders and beyond? Well,
look, I mean, the state of democracy is under peril worldwide. Okay, I mean, you see it everywhere. Right-wing extremism in lots of parts of the countries are taking hold. So this is why I was saying I'm coming back to the gap between rich and poor, and people's concerns not being taken seriously, because I think that is the hotbed, that is the Achilles heels, where people lose faith in democracy, and that is very, very that's a very dangerous ground to go down.
Yeah, we talk about trust and the fact that with all this information flying around and unverified information most of the time, there is this notion of losing faith, and there's this notion of I can't believe what I see anymore, and I to find sincerity is also difficult. what can journalists do better as they communicate with the world?
Well, look, I mean, we have to be very honest, first and foremost, that journalism is changing, right? I mean, before 10 years ago, you know, my show back in Berlin, your show, we would have a certain monopoly, if you will, or certainly a very strong foothold on opinion-making influence. I mean, that is waning, without a doubt. Now, it's podcasts, you know, it's people like Joe Rogan and the likes that are having the heavy hitters on their shows. And keep in mind, they have 3-4 hours of unfiltered time, right? They can really get to the bottom of the story without...
That's a good point.
I mean, without interviews being cut and so on and so forth. So it's not a secret that a lot of people, especially the young audience, is being drawn towards that kind of format, right? So, but I still think, otherwise I wouldn't have chosen to become a journalist back when I was a student. I still believe in this profession. It's not a secret, and it's not a coincidence and that this profession is enshrined in many democratic institutions as you know, the fourth column, as somebody who holds the powerful accountable. But we need to do so, right? We need to hold the powerful accountable. We need to make sure that not a small a billionaire elite of oligarchs are calling the shots and undermining the democratic process. You know, where do we come in? But we also cannot be naive about this. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. The Los Angeles Times is owned by a billionaire. So these are not God-given, God-created institutions, right? At the end of the day, that is a credibility factor that we need to preserve.
Well, it's not always I have a fellow journalist and speaker with me, but with that we have run out of time.
Already.
So thank you so much, Ali, for coming in and of course weighing in on some of these you know, global issues as well. But that's all the time we have for now. But as the world continues to face noise, speed and uncertainty, conversations grounded in clarity and respect will remain essential. May this be a reminder that dialogue is still one of our most powerful tools for understanding each other. Well, for the latest, do visit BERNAMA.com and follow us on our social media platforms. This has been The World on BERNAMA TV. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.